Have you ever gone and played a 23-year-old game you've never played before and found out it was a masterpiece?
Hold it right there, Garrett! Move and you're dead! Guards! Over here!
Yeah, me neither. Despite its flaws, I actually do think this game can be called a masterpiece, or at the very least revolutionary. But before I suck this game off too much, let's look at the character we play as. Garrett grew up an orphan living on the streets. He spent his time delivering messages and pickpocketing to survive, until one day he tried to steal from the wrong guy. Our experience starts after Garrett has mastered the arts. All that's left is our final exam that makes for a pretty good tutorial. Test 1 is stay out of the light. The light indicator at the bottom of the screen shows how visible we are, and if this is full black, you're practically invisible, even if a guard walks right past you. Test 2 is all about noise. Different surfaces are louder or quieter to walk on. You can practically run on things like carpet, grass, and soft dirt, while things like metal and tile make it impossible to walk on without a guard hearing you from 20 feet away.
I could hear that.
Try again.
Next up, we test our skills with the bow and blade. The bow feels very good to shoot, having to fully pull back your shot so your arrows fly farther and actually do some damage. But the sword, on the other hand, is by far my least favorite part of the game. On paper, it sounds pretty awesome. Depending on which side of the enemy your camera is facing, you'll swing from that direction. You can also charge up an overhead attack and block enemy attacks with your sword. That all sounds fine, but the issue comes with how slow you move when your sword's out. Even worse is when your epic sword fight ends with your opponent running away to get help.
You crying, boy? You crying, boy? Maybe we'll go back down to McDonald's and get you a Whamburger, some French fries. How about a Weineken? You little sissy boy!
Combat also just doesn't feel too responsive, and enemies later in the game are extremely aggressive and way more competent with their sword than you are. But the game is called Thief, so maybe Garrett not being an expert sword fighter is a good thing. When you're done trying out your weapons, the game shows off the item system. You can pick up things like potions, keys, food, and a bunch of other stuff. A big problem being just how much Garrett carries sometimes. There's points when you're carrying around like 5 different keys, and it just gets repetitive cycling through them all. Or even worse, trying to open a door with them. Something like a keychain that counts as one item would have been a great time saver. You can also pick up and throw objects. One thing the tutorial fails to mention is you can lean into doors to hear if there's any guards on the other side. And the final part is just learning how to climb some rope and doing some basic parkour. Then we're ready to graduate.
The keepers were training me to be one of them, but I found other uses for those skills.
Before continuing on, I just have to disclose the fact I'm using a mod called T-Fix. It updates Thief to run on a new Dark engine, making the game playable for modern hardware. It also comes with some optional up-to-date textures that pretty up the game a bit, which is something I personally used, and the game actually looks amazing. Also, it's a good idea to download and use the newest version of OpenAL audio software. It supposedly cleans up the game's sounds. I'll put a Steam guide in the description if you decide you want to try out Thief, but back to the sales pitch. You get a cutscene before every mission, and other than the fixed aspect ratio, they're really good. They all have this cool old-timey art style, and it helps with the motif of the game. Mostly it's just Garrett discussing his plan, showing off the area and the map. It helps with knowing what to do.
I have a simple job planned for this evening. Break into a guarded mansion, steal another fat nobleman's priceless trinket, and leave quietly. Lord Bafford is out of town, and rumor has it that the captain of his house guard went with him as a bodyguard. The time is ripe for a bit of burglary. The front gate of Lord Bafford's manor is always guarded, and the main street is far too exposed. But Cuddy tells me there's a better way in, around to the side, more out of the way. One guard, and likely no witnesses to complicate matters. The piece Cuddy wants is a scepter, silver, jewels, the usual adornments. It should command a high price. Bafford, like most of his kind, probably keeps his treasures on the top floor of the place, close to his heart, and far from his servants. No point in waiting. I have Cuddy's old sketches of the place, and everyone who's going to be asleep inside already is. It's time to begin.
There's still a few more things before you can start a mission. One is selecting the difficulty. I'm the type of person that hates difficulty sliders in games, but Thief does a good job mixing it up from the status quo. Normal is just normal, complete the objective. Hard difficulty adds in a secondary objective and requires you to steal a bit of gold to finish the mission. And then after that is expert. In expert difficulty, you have to steal even more gold. In some missions it's doable, but in other missions I ended up spending hours just trying to find more gold to finish the mission. That on top of the fact you're not allowed to kill anyone. Yes, in every single mission you're not allowed to kill other people. This means you'll be beating everyone over the head with this blackjack. But there's a few issues. Firstly, when an enemy discovers you, the blackjack no longer knocks them out, but instead kills them. There's an exception to this where if you stand behind an enemy in combat and crouch and hit them at just the right time, it might knock them out. But there's a pretty good chance whoever you're fighting will just end up killing you, or get killed by you, which instantly fails the mission. I feel the blackjack does such little damage that having to use it in combat is punishing enough.
I think a baby bird pecked me.
I ended up playing on expert mode anyways because there's some areas you can't get to otherwise, and I wanted to see all the game had to offer. Before you start a mission, you get to buy some cool tools with the money you got from the previous missions, and Garrett must be buying from the most overpriced vendor in the world. All those gold cups, plates, and diamonds stolen just to buy a few sleep arrows. Some of the tools are invaluable, like these water arrows that can extinguish candles and torches. Sadly, they don't work on covered light sources. Flash bombs are pretty useful too. Throw them at the ground to stun enemies, then go up behind them with your blackjack and give them a good whack. There's also rope arrows you can use to climb up if you shoot them into wood. There's moss arrows you can shoot at the ground, greatly dampening your footsteps, making it possible to pretty much run and jump on tile. There's a lot more stuff, but I'll just let you find that out for yourself. Thief really was far ahead of its time. There's very few games that have this same ability to fully engulf you in, to the point where you forget you're playing a video game. The main contributor here being sound. Suggestion: play this game with a good set of headphones. Okay, continuing on. Every way this game uses sound is perfect, and it's almost impossible to describe without you just playing the game for yourself, but I'm still gonna try. You already know different surfaces make different noises, but other people walking around also make those same noises. That combined with the fact that everyone rather whistles, or is a 10-year-old smoker. This means you can truly hear people more than you can see them, not to mention all the conversations people get in. There's so much dialogue you'd just swear that you were playing an Elder Scrolls game, the only difference being you're listening in on these conversations instead of partaking in them.
It's all these lower-class people working in the ticket office and such. They steal whatever they can get their hands on. Valerius should fire all of them.
For once, I agree with you, Christine. Scrapping the lower class would certainly clean things up around here. But what will you do for food and shelter when they kick you out?
Taffer.
There's multiple voice actors with multiple lines, so people don't repeat themselves too often, and every once in a while Garrett will have a few words to say.
This'll make any fence crack a smile.
It adds to his personality. I really can't stress enough how big a factor the dialogue is in this game. Another area I see this game being far beyond its time is the AI. Look, I know what you're gonna say. How can you call the AI good after that disgusting intro? And in response, I really can't. At least for that part of the AI. What I'm talking about is the AI before you get into combat. Let's say you peek around a corner or do anything else to reveal yourself for a short time. The guards will get spooked and say something, but they won't come investigate. Same thing goes for if you make a little noise for a split second. If you make yourself too noticeable, they'll come to investigate. And if they find you, well, you know what happens. Guards that have 100% noticed you are more cautious whenever you go and hide and come back a little bit later, or at least that's how it felt. Now, these things might sound like a standard in today's day and age, but I specifically remember watching a developer Let's Play of Ratchet & Clank 2, where the two developers mention how proud they were of their 3-phase enemy AI, which works similarly to this. By the way, Ratchet 2 came out 5 years after this game, and that part of the AI still wasn't as detailed as it is in Thief. Not that it really had to be, since Ratchet wasn't really a stealth game, but I just wanted to bring it up. Thief's missions and level designs are sadly hit or miss, especially when you factor in the 2 bad DLC missions that came with the Gold Edition. I think the levels I didn't like in the base game were simply because of the undead enemies. Unlike people, zombies are pretty brain dead. They don't talk, and if you beat on them with your sword, they'll just fall asleep until the next time you run by. That is, if you don't use holy water on your arrows to flat out blow them up. There's a lot more otherworldly creatures too, especially towards the end of the game, and I think the biggest issue I have with them is that they have no personality, unlike the multiple types of humans in the game. I was okay with the use of zombies in Mission 2, where you had to sneak up through a cursed mine to rescue your friend from prison, but levels that revolve around these otherworldly enemies just weren't my cup of tea. The 2 bad DLC missions I didn't like for other reasons. The first mission, you have to sneak into the Thieves Guild to exert your dominance. It's a cool mission, but I can't help feeling they forgot they were making a stealth game. For example, these 2 guards are watching the entrance to the next part of the level, and they never stop looking in the same direction. There's also an excessive amount of enemies in this mission for how early it is in the game. The next DLC mission is the Mage's Tower. I don't have much to say about it, it's simply repetitive with its 4 different towers having way too similar layouts. Not much more to talk about there. There's some other bad levels in the base game, but let's look at some of the good ones. And let me just say these are some of the most creative missions I've ever seen. First up is a mission where you have to creep your way into a mansion to steal a magical sword. The outside might look pretty normal, but as you edge your way up multiple floors, things get more and more supernatural. This dude's backyard has some pretty crazy shit going on with it too. If you play on expert mode, you can flip this switch and reveal a secret underwater passage. It leads to this miniature city. Going through the water pipe behind the city will pop you out of a sink, and it's an interesting dichotomy of the tiny town you just went through. I was really blown away seeing this level for the first time. The game up until now has had a few zombies and a couple holy wizards, but nothing even close to this. The slow buildup of all the mystical shit in this level was just perfect pacing. The second level I found most interesting is the final DLC mission I've yet to mention. The goal's easy enough. Find a stone key that you need for story reasons that's been hidden in a cave. But it turns out the key was already taken by men paid by the opera house that's sitting above this cave. And you now need to fully explore this opera house and find your key. For anyone thinking about picking up this game still, I'd suggest skipping to the timestamp. We all good? Alright, let's continue. The story in Thief is pretty good, albeit strange. The first half of the game is just Garrett stealing some high-priced items to get his hands on some better gear, but that all changes after we successfully complete a mission to steal a magical sword. It turns out the owner of the sword was the one that hired us, and he was simply testing us to see if we could be trusted with a more important task, which is recovering a magical relic called the Eye. Upon reaching the church this thing is being kept in, we find out we need 4 elemental keys to get in. So that's what we do for the next 4 missions. When we unlock the church, the eye is simple enough to get our hands on, but the asshole talking eye locked the front door on us, so we have to escape another way.
Leaving so soon. I think that would be too easy. These doors I sealed once again. You have to find another way.
Now, how am I going to get out of here?
And this mission was actually pretty fun. You find a ghost that'll help you escape under one condition. You have to pretty much bless his burial site with like 4 different things, and you gotta run around this town figuring it all out. It's definitely one of the cooler missions. Whenever we escape and return with this artifact, it turns out this old man we've been working for isn't even human, and is in fact some pagan god of nature called the Trickster. He doesn't like how humans have evolved, with all their metal swords and stone buildings and iPhones, and we just gave him the item to destroy humanity. If only I listened to those talking stones.
Greed shall be your undoing, poor Garrett.
Anyways, the artifact we gave to the old man requires a power source, a human eye. If only there were more environmentally friendly devices like this today. Bill Gates would be so happy. So anyways, the Trickster leaves us for dead. A bad move for any video game or movie antagonist. We escape his demented acid brain dungeon and team up with the hammers that we've been stealing from for pretty much the entire game. And then we sneak into hell, replacing the eye with a counterfeit. Now it's just time to wait for him to finish the ritual.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
When all is said and done, we finish the game with a glimpse into the future. Garrett makes a full recovery, once again leaving the keepers that trained him. You see a promise of a new age, a man burning up some 7018 rod, a new mechanical eye to replace the old one, and a hint towards a sequel.
The Trickster is dead. Beware the dawn of the Metal Age.
All in all, I'm really happy that I got to try out Thief. I really don't think any video could do this game proper justice. I was originally going to play Thief 2 and make it into one big video, but after sinking 30 hours into Thief 1, I sadly just don't have the time. I hear the next game gets rid of the undead issue I have with this game, and I'm really excited to try it out. I'll probably try live streaming it sometime in the distant future. And by the way, I can't really make a Thief video without talking about Gloomwood. It's a spiritual successor to these games, and it's made by New Blood Studios, the same guys responsible for Dusk and Medieval, and partially Ultrakill. New Blood's quickly turned into one of my favorite studios, and Gloomwood doesn't disappoint. Sadly, it's an early access, so there's only about 4 hours of meat on the bone. It's worth checking out if you have some excess cash, and like me, if you have issues with the average video games that come out these days, it's good to support those type of developers. And definitely add Thief 1 and 2 to your wish list. I bought both these games for like $1 each. So 30 hours of play for $1 definitely works itself out. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, do all the things that YouTubers usually ask you to do. And if you're new to the channel and like FromSoft games, check out my Armored Core series. It was pretty much FromSoft's thing before Dark Souls took over. And there's not a lot of information on the games on YouTube,